So just kind of thinking about that, thinking about the representation, and particularly if we're thinking about diversities, multi-intersectionality, and also thinking about where is the voice conveyed. So what are the cultured, the linguistic, and gendered contexts? And I think this very much echoes some of that presentation that came very early. And where is the agency evident as a result? It's all very well that we have the recorded voice of students, but what happens? How does it change the curriculum? How does it change assessment? How does it change our pedagogy? How does it change the social relationships that we have? Those are really important questions. Now, here's a chat graph that you'll find very difficult to interpret from where you're at, but don't worry, all of these slides will be available. And it's thinking about this concept of intersectionality and the multiple forms of identity, and how it's so important for us to consider those, as my learner friend who is here, to think about the nature of the diversities before the students come in. Somebody was talking about the cake, and just as, and to think about the ingredients that you have, right? So rather than retrofitting, sometimes it's like these buildings with steps. We don't purposefully create buildings with steps to think, I know how we can keep those people with wheelchairs out of the building. Nobody sets about kind of doing that, but then when somebody appears at the university with a wheelchair, where's the architect? Where are the designers? How can we change this? So I think the trick is to think anticipatory, to think at the beginning, to think at the outset. So this is anticipatory inclusive design. And the best way to do that is to include the voice of the learners, the diverse learners themselves, in relation to what teaching and learning can be, in relation to what different types of assessment can be, in relation to different types of teaching and learning. How can we change our pedagogy so that it's much more inclusive of everybody, right? So these are the students who are sitting down here, Christian and Alice and Harriet and Anna, and my two colleagues, Emma and, help me out, Lisa. Kirsty, from nursing, from sports, and I'm from education. So I think that transdisciplinary approach as well is really important. And I'm really keen to work with engineers, with scientists, with biologists. And what's interesting is I think we have to create allies within departments. I'm speaking from a higher education beginning background area, but nurses in particular, medical people are our allies. They do a lot of work on reflection, thinking about their own identities and how that impacts on practice. And I think we can learn from that as teachers as well, thinking about our identities, thinking about what are the cultural attributes that we take along with us. So the learners assisted in co-constructing the input of and the shape of an international conference. This was the ICE3 conference, which was hosted by the University of Worcester and Ibn Zori University from Morocco, which was collaborated with Include as well. And so the students began to talk about, well, what's going to make this conference more inclusive for them? And also providing testimonies of their lived experiences, informing the development of a program of professional enhancement for higher education teachers. So they spoke about what their experiences were like. And I'm going to share that CPD, those modules with you at the end of this presentation as a gift to you all. Because the more clicks that I get, the more opportunities I have to become a professor. But more importantly, the 4 students involved and the 2 colleagues co-authored research papers. So it's about enabling them. It's not about us studying like them as subjects, but actually how can we collaborate and how can we make research together? One of the areas that I shared this morning was on lesson study. I think that's critical for all of us. And I like the challenge that Professor Richard Rose gave to us, which was how best to improve our practice through research. I'm not going to delay on this. Many of you have kind of had that insight about universal design previously, but I am going to focus on that element of engagement because it's with the heart. That's where, a large extent, where we begin our foundation steps. And I heard the word love mentioned earlier on as well. And that's it. How do we create empathy? How do we create compassion and love and caring for the students that we have? And again, I'm not going to delay too much. I think many of you are familiar with these documents, the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. However, I am going to maybe highlight the words that are here. They have the right to express their views freely on all matters affecting them, and their views being given due weight in accordance with their age and maturity, on an equal basis with other children. So it's vitally important that we get strategies to actually access those voices of the students. And in terms of the UN Sustainable Development Goals as well, ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning for opportunities for all. And if you're not familiar with this, All Means All, the document from 2020, I would encourage you to have a look through it in terms of policy. And it does mention UDL principles as a conceptual framework, as a helpful way for schools or higher education institutes. And indeed, in some jurisdictions, Ireland and Portugal, for example, they've adopted this as a standard approach to shift policy, systemic policy changes, particularly in higher education. So here I come to the voice of the students. And I think it's worthwhile just reading them, and perhaps I will read them out, I'll give them voice. So the biggest impact for me was having a seat at the table, and that resonates again. So who's making the decisions? It's important for the learners to be able to shape the nature of their educational experiences. And that knowing that people wanted to hear my voice. And for Alice, she said, this is the blind student, she said, the idea of universal design for learning informed by the student voice is something which captivated me. So it's empowering for her. For Harriet, it was contributing to the conference, was transformative with the emphasis placed on the learner's voice, and it allowed her to express her voice freely. So I think that sense of just being empowered again through voice. And for Christian, it was not being listened to for far too long. He said, we have not been engaged enough, we need to challenge the status quo. And I think we've heard that already this morning. And to think about this teacher-student relationship, are we excluding the most important people, the learners themselves? Are we doing that? So are they learning? It's great, maybe we have very knowledgeable, intellectual teachers who are able to convey their discipline, but are they capturing the learners themselves? So the key project learning was inclusivity, the necessity to position inclusivity and flexibility at the heart of the curriculum design. And what's interesting, I think, about this is that this idea is almost as old as I am. Oh my God, a little bit younger than I am, actually. But that kind of concept of citizen control, our learner agency, it's an idea that's been around for a long time, and we still haven't managed to make it factual. So that's our challenge, I think. One of the areas that the students identified themselves was the importance of peer support networks. So disabled students being linked with other disabled students across the university, that was really empowering for them, so that they could contribute to ways in which policy and practice could be changed. So the insights that they gained from international collaboration, I think, was really important as well. So if there are any of you who want to follow up on this afterwards in terms of making links with universities, I'm sure the colleagues at the University of Worcester would be very welcome to and open to that suggestion. and the concept of systemic change, bringing about systemic changes that shift towards inclusive educational practices, and policy changes, the necessity for policies that support inclusive education informed by disabled learners' experiences. I think partly as a result of this project, Anastasia Kennett was invited by the QAA, which is the Quality Something Authority in the UK for higher education, to enable her voice to be heard in shaping future inclusion. So, what's the nature then of grounding practice and research in terms of learner voice? So put it at the center, thinking about intersecting characteristics, enabling resources and strategies, and collaborating across the campus. So those are the key areas. Now, again, I know how much QR codes are appreciated in this country, so I'm going to take. I'm going to delay on this slide for a little bit, okay, to give you an opportunity to click on this, and this will bring you to a page on the International Collaboratories website, where there are 4 modules on universal design for learning. And those 4 modules were partly designed by the learner voice, by learners in Indonesia through Universitas Indonesia. And interestingly, I think the students whose voices were incorporated with this were from many of the remote areas. Some of you described this as the tribal areas. So there were the tribal areas within Indonesia, and I think that's really important. But what I would invite you to do is to participate on this project and give me your perspectives from where you are, because I think it's important that this professional development is consistently improved and shaped as a result of your practices and as a result of your feedback. And there's an opportunity, there's a form at the start of the sessions, the 4 professional development sessions, which invite you to provide feedback afterwards. So I invite you to engage with that over the next couple of weeks maybe, and then provide some feedback to us. That would be really welcome. Now, I'm going to finish up just a few minutes late, if you don't mind, in the same way that I started. And what I'd like you to do is from this session, what I'd like you to do is to identify just one action, just one thing that you can take away from here, and one thing that you're going to act to include, because it's about action. So I want to find out I'd like you to inform a person who's close to you what one area of practice you're going to change as a result of this presentation, or perhaps even the previous presentation, and how you're going to follow up on that. So are you going to write down that promise to yourself and revisit that in 2 weeks' time? But over to you for 2 minutes before I come back, okay? This is my waggy teacher finger. So I am wagging my finger in a teachery way, encouraging people to sort of think about the consequences of perhaps not doing this activity. I think, thank you so much. I think, again, like that, just listening to that level of, sorry, raise your hand, teachers. Raise your hand. Thank you. Raise your hands, teachers. Thank you. Or policymakers, or wherever you might be. Thank you so much. Okay, just to bring you back. Thank you very much. So I think from the energy that I was getting from you, there's so much scope and so much that can be done in terms of integrating that learner voice in our practices. So hopefully I've lit a little spark in relation to your thinking over the next few weeks, few months, perhaps even few years, and perhaps even for the rest of your lifetime. Hopefully I've transformed your whole view on education in that 40 minutes or whatever. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Shaw.